Whew, do you guys remember that one time I said that there might not be so much more Fire Emblem 16 Tree Houses news? Haha, those were some good times. Guess what, guys? There's more Fire Emblem 16 Tree Houses news. So yeah, let's crack open our Pepsi Max and let us get into it, because there's a whole new article out and we gotta delve into it. So this article is a bit of a mixed bag because it contains news from so many various sources. There's just so many different places releasing footage right now. We had the Fire Emblem Treehouse presentation, which was basically 30 minutes of gameplay, and then we also had another 12 minutes of no commentary gameplay uploaded by the YouTube channel GameSpot Gameplay. And some of the news in this article are things that we already know, but it's nice to get them confirmed. We also have to clear up some misconception regarding battalions, because there were some translation issues, I think, with the old article, so we're going to look more into that. And yeah, let's just jump into the article and pick it apart bit by bit. So first, let's talk a little bit about the time skip. Fire Emblem 16 is divided into two phases. We have the school phase and the war phase. And the war phase takes place in-game 5 years after the school phase. So in the school phase, this is where we've seen most of the footage from. This is what we call high school Emblem. It's just Byleth running around being a professor, tutoring the students, and will occasionally go out on missions, fighting bandits and the like. I don't think there's going to be that much of a dark story going on in the school phase. It's going to be very lighthearted, it's not going to take itself as seriously, and we were very afraid that this was going to be the whole game, but it turns out there's so much more to this game than just the school phase. The school phase can very much be viewed as sort of the tutorial of the game, or sort of the preparation of the game. Kind of like Lynn's story in Fire Emblem 7 is the Act 1 to Hector and Elowood's story, which is Act 2. So the school phase is just going to be a precursor, and how you train your students in the school phase is going to massively impact the war phase. Now, what is so incredibly interesting about these two phases of the game is that early on, when you make your choice about what class you want to teach, whether it be the Blue Lions, the Golden Deer, or the Black Eagles, that won't have a massive impact on the first phase of the game. When you run around as Byleth, tutoring your students, going on side quests, and doing all those little mini-games in the monastery, that part of the game will be very, very similar from class to class. Of course, the big difference is you'll get different playable characters to play around with, so it will feel very different in that regard. But the actual gameplay of the first acts is going to be very similar. However, 5 years later, post-time skip, when the game enters its so-called war phase, that is when your choice of class will really come into play, because that decides what route you pick. So if you decided to teach the Blue Lions, you will go with Dimitri's route. If you decided to teach the Black Eagles, you will go with Edelgard's route. And consequently, if you decided to teach the Golden Deer, you will go with Claude's routes. So, to put it in a funny way, your choices really do matter. They just don't matter right away. So you have these three different paths with different stories, possibly different maps, and for all we know, different endings. And it has been revealed that you will be facing off against former students of the other classes that you didn't teach, and that you might even be forced to kill them. So if you decided to side with Dimitri, for example, you might be forced to kill Edelgard and or Claude. In fact, there is this scene that we see very briefly of Edelgard leaning over her sword, being out of breath, staring up at Byleth, and it looks like Byleth is about to finish her off. I think that this is from a route where Byleth did not decide to teach the Black Eagles, and thus as a result in the war phase, he ended up clashing with Edelgard and is now forced to kill her. We don't know if there's going to be a happy ending where all the lords come together and hold hands and fight against the big baddie of the game. Apparently this is going to be a very dark and gritty story, so I don't think we're going to get that happy ending. In fact, I think we're going to get a very sad or bittersweet ending, where maybe only the lord of our house will be the one surviving. So all of this seems to be setting up for a pretty dark and gruesome story where we will be forced to face off against former friends and classmates and have to kill them in battle, which will be a very stark contrast to the first act of the game where we will basically be playing high school Emblem. And I think what they're trying to do here story-wise is recapture some of the things they failed to do with Fates. Of course, with Fates, we had to face off against the royals from the other side, and it was supposed to be very sad when we eventually had to kill them. And I will admit, Fates did fail its storytelling on a very basic level, but when the royals died in the cutscenes, it did touch even me a little bit. But because Fates failed so fundamentally in its storytelling, it didn't leave as much of an impact on the player as it should have, in my opinion. And I think that's what they're trying to do with this game. So if they really pull this off and they actually manage to do their storytelling right, I think this will leave a big impact on the player base, and we will see a lot of sad Fire Emblem players, and I personally can't wait. I think it's going to be great. So moving on from story to gameplay, let's talk a little bit about battalions, or rather, let's clear up a misconception. Now, I don't know if this was just the article misrepresenting battalions or if I was misreading the article, but in the first article where we read about battalions, essentially how I thought they would work would be, let's say we have Petra with 30 hit points, and you attach a battalion to Petra that has 30 hit points. The battalion would take damage first, and then once the battalion's hit points were depleted, then Petra would start taking damage, so they would sort of act like a shield in a way. However, that is not how battalions will work at all. They do not act as shields around a character. Now, once you attach a battalion to a unit, it will provide you with bonus stats, and it might even also increase your hit points. However, the battalion has a stamina bar, which is essentially its hit points. And once your character takes damage, the battalion also takes stamina equal to the damage you take. And once the battalion is reduced to 0 stamina, it doesn't provide any bonuses anymore, you can't use gambits anymore, it's essentially like knocked outs, but after the battle you can return home to the monastery and you can pay gold to restore the battalion back to full stamina. But it doesn't work as a shield, it's not like it's gonna take damage before your character. I don't really know why the article wrote that, or maybe I just misread it, I don't know. But no, it's just gonna be sort of like a separate little hit point bar next to your character in addition to health. And if your character dies, I assume the battalion dies as well. Next up, we're gonna talk about something absolutely hilarious called dynamic gambits, which are special attacks you can pull off if you are deployed with a battalion of knights, and this is the best thing I've seen all day. Now, I don't care what you guys have to say, this is the best clip I've seen of Tree Houses. It's literally Claude blowing up a bunch of enemies with a wagon. I don't know why this is so hilarious, but I absolutely love it, and I can already see a bunch of memes being created out of this. We then get to see some footage of a healing gambit called Resonant White Magic. And this is a gambit performed by a group of monks who all come together to perform some sort of big area of effect healing, similar to the Fortify spell from the previous games. And what's also very interesting is that this gambit is performed by the character Marianne, which is a character we know very little about. We know she's from the Golden Deer, but we haven't gotten any profile updates on her yet, so we know next to nothing about her. And I do hope that we get some more information about Marianne, because she's pretty cute. So next up, let's talk about coordinated attacks. We got this cool little clip here. We get to see the character Ingrid riding in on her horse and attacking an enemy, and you can see in this first battle forecast here, she's backed up by one of her allies. However, then she changes targets, and then she's backed up by 3 of her allies. Now this is basically a more simplified version of the old support system, but it's a lot more visual. Because when she attacks, you can see all of her supporting allies joining in on the attack. You get to see their battalions like flanking the enemy. But all it will really provide you with is a bonus to your hits and avoid. No other stats as far as we know. So again, it's very similar to the old support system. It's a lot more simplified, but it's more visual. You can see it play out on the battlefield. Next up, we get to see some footage of some various skills in action. We get to see Lorenz moving about as a cavalier using his Canto skill, which is just called Move Again. We get to see Mercedes showing off her Live to Serve special ability, which heals her for the amount of healing that she does with her staves. We also get to see Didu's class ability, which gives him defense whenever he waits. However, I would like to focus on the fourth clip of Ignatz as a thief stealing something from Didu. Now, we know that stealing is back in the game, and that you need more speed than your opponent to steal something from them, and that you can't steal items, but right here, Ignatz appears to be stealing what looks to be a Draco shield from Didu, so I'm not sure if stat boosters are going to be in this game, or if they can be stolen, but I sure hope that's the case, because, as we all know, I love stealing. Next up, let's talk about demonic beasts. They will be these like big boss type creatures that will appear on various battlefields, and apparently they're neutral, which means that enemy bandits will also attack them if they come close. Now, these guys will require multiple units to deal with. You'll need to use gambits and all your skills to have a chance against them because they're super tough. And they have these huge area of effect attacks where they like breathe poison, so you can't clump up around them. You have to be very careful using your Canto to get out of the way. And what's even more interesting about them is that not only do they take up more squares on the map, so they're huge, but they also seem to have multiple hit point bars. So this particular beast in the clip posted on GameSpot's YouTube channel actually have 3 hit point bars. So once you kill it once, a crystal will vanish and it will have 2 additional hit point bars that you have to go through. I wonder if this is going to be a way for them to extend the lifespan of bosses later on in the game. Maybe you'll need to kill them like 4 or even 5 times. Could be really annoying, but I've always wanted sort of longer and bigger boss battles in Fire Emblem. I always feel like end bosses in Fire Emblem die too quickly. So having like 4 or 5 different hit point bars that you need to like chew your way through might actually make these enemies a lot more interesting to fight. The rest of the article then just shows a bunch of things that we're already aware of, that there will be a normal and hard difficulty, that there will be classic and casual, and it finishes off just showing off the various classes, which we've already covered in a previous video, so I'm not going to go into too much more detail about that. However, this video is at an end. We've reached the bottom of the article. There's a couple of things that I didn't touch upon, but they are basically things that I mentioned in earlier videos. I don't want to repeat myself too much. Anyway, guys, I said that there wouldn't be more Tree Houses news, but apparently I was very wrong. We are not done anytime soon, guys, so expect more videos soon when more articles are released. What I will be doing is I will be taking the 12-minute clip that was released on GameSpot's channel, and I will be live commentating over it, because it was just 10 to 12 minutes of uninterrupted Fire Emblem gameplay without commentary. So there's a lot of things that I would like to comment on regarding that video, because I saw a bunch of interesting little things in it that I definitely would like to talk more about. So expect that coming out soon. Anyway, guys, this is the end of the video. Leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed it, and let me know what you thought about the news. As always, my name has been Mengs, and I shall see you guys next time. Bye-bye.